right, everyone. Like you heard from the intro, another special guest here live from New York. I wanted to say that because shout out to SNL and shout out to New York. Hayley Lewis joins us once again here on Show About Sports from a whole different location. She was in Kansas City the last time we talked. Now she's pursuing her dreams out in New York. And to be honest, I'm amazed by it. I love to see what I'm seeing out there. She's one of my favorite sports broadcasters and content creators in the Threads and Instagram space. So, Hayley, say what's up to the Show About Sports crew.
I appreciate the intro. Like I said, Griffin, you're always so good at that. I need to have you follow me around with a megaphone. But it probably looks like I'm a little bit in a forest. I found a random bench. We are hiding out in Central Park today because it's it's like the crossover between summer and fall. So the amount of layers I started with this morning and how much I have already sweat through the layers, and now I'm like, oh, it's back to being 80 degrees here and sunny. That back and forth right now is what's going on. But happy to be here, excited to be here from a different location. It's kind of still fun. We were talking about it before, the Chiefs being in town, or at least in Jersey. Don't say that. Apparently, we don't lump that into New York. But that was fun to be able to see them here in person in a new city, but repping the same team. So
Yeah, no, I bet it was super cool. I've never been out to East Rutherford to see a game in New York, but I have been to New York a few times and I've always loved it. So tell me how it's been so far as you get up and running up there, especially in the sports world, as it's kind of the Mecca or one of the Meccas, we should say.
yeah, it's been honestly, I think the biggest purpose of the move, especially, was just to be able to have more things at your fingertips, and kind of being rubbing elbows with those same people. And I know, like, a lot of the people we always see every year at the Super Bowl, it's so much fun to, like, be able to interact and talk with media from all over. But I think the cool thing is that everyone is here. And so it's just as quick as taking a subway ride or an Uber or something really quickly to get, within arm's reach of everyone. So that the accessibility really has been the biggest key to this move. So it's been fun. I'm tired. I'm sure you can probably tell if I took off my glasses, you would see the bags underneath my eyes because the hardest thing here is saying no. And telling people like, okay, I can't, like, there was the first week that I was here. I was like, I did something every single night of the week. I'm like, I'm good. Like I'm in my mid 30s. I'm good. I'm tapped out. But it's always going. And so that's the cool thing, is that there is no lack of activity, of sports, like you said, and just even of meeting people in this. You network and you see how close this world really is.
Yeah, it is truly crazy out there. My wife and I actually honeymooned in New York. A shout out to
Oh,
that trip.
really?
Yeah, we did a really unique trip out to New York because she had never seen it. I had seen it before. And it's just the city that never sleeps. I mean,
Yeah.
they say that phrase a lot, but it's true. Like you just said, there is a million things to do all night, all day long. And essentially, the proximity to everything and people is incredible. And so I've always thought about that on the West Coast, going down to California, because that's kind
Yeah.
of the New York of the West Coast in LA and in that area. It's always things are moving a little bit different than both of our hometowns, I would say, with Kansas City. For yourself in Seattle, like myself, it's a little bit slower way of life, especially when you go to a major city like that. So that's awesome to hear, though. But
Yeah.
here's what we need to do. You got to see the Chiefs' first victory of the year, which is crazy to say following week 3. You would expect us to be saying, oh, they're now 3-0, but now they're 1-2. So let's just start here. Instant reactions to that win over the Giants the other night, where, at least from my perspective, it didn't jump off the page, if you will.
No, that's an understatement. Also, Griffin, I would like to point out they started losing once I left. So I moved there in 2019, and it was like Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl ever since then. Now that I have moved away, all of a sudden the winning ways are, a thing of the past, it looks like. But I think it would be an over exaggeration to say that. All joking aside, yes, it's a rough start to the season, but really when you look at what they did in the first half versus the second half, especially the first half of that game, it was like, oh no, here we go again. Like, are you about to lose to the Giants? Like, we're talking, and no hate again. I know Seattle is your, like, Russell Wilson, so much respect for the guy. Obviously, things aren't the same, and things are going to change. And now that he's with the Giants, I mean, I'm sure you've heard about the fact that probably a rookie is going to have the starting job now over him after what happened with the Chiefs, which you feel for him there. But if the Chiefs were to lose against the Giants, and it looked like they were going head to head with them all the way up until the first half, I was like, this is a wake up call. And it's almost a little, I think, scary just for the fact of, okay, this was the season where the Chiefs were able to prove, or going to prove, if it's a slow decline to what they had, or if they're going to sustain like a dynastic run, of course, like the New England Patriots did with Tom Brady. Not a great start, but what we saw in the second half were those flashes where we saw Mahomes finally connecting with the deep ball. We saw the run game at least a little bit kind of start to move things through. And then you also saw the defense really start to set up. The 2 picks against Russell Wilson obviously were huge keys. Turnovers, takeaways. If you look at the stats, they were pretty even except for those turnovers, and that's really what's going to make or break games, especially in the NFL where games. I hate to say it, it's so cliche, but really, it really is such a small margin of victory for these teams. So, yes, they need to figure some things out. I definitely don't think it is all ironed out quite yet, but I do think it was just good to get in the win column, especially since they haven't since last season, right? If you want to loop in the Super Bowl loss, it's been 3 back-to-back losses since Kansas City has seen that win column.
Yeah, and it's rare to see coming off of a 15-2 regular season last year, where a lot of people were like, okay, the refs are giving it to them, the ball's
Hmm.
bouncing their way. A season where we saw the cracks, we saw the things that we didn't like. They didn't have those 40-point wins where you're like, oh, the Bills' offense is electric, but they still got it done. And so we went into this season being like, why bet against that again? Because it would just be silly
Yeah,
to. They always figure out how to make it work. But we have to give some teams credit. The Chargers have looked like some positive Chargers to start the year, going 3-0 now. The Eagles, Super Bowl champs. That's a hard start to your schedule. You then
yeah.
go to the Giants and you face a team that you should win and beat, but you're already down 0-2, so you kind of have this mentality of losing, and you could see it in the first half, but then the second half they started figuring it out. But now you head to a team like the Ravens in week 4, where I'm going to
Yeah.
get worried. But here's what's so interesting. Why are the narratives so different about the Chiefs and the Ravens right now, even though they're both sitting at 1-2?
Right. What I think is interesting, and it's a good point that you bring up. I also was watching Monday Night Football last night, and I was like, oh, great. It's just
Yeah.
like, not only do they see the Ravens at home this coming week, but then they're gonna, they get a little bit of a breather to go see the Jags on the road, but then they come back and they're gonna have to see the Lions. And after watching both those teams, I was literally sitting there sweating a little bit, being like, okay, you better lock in the slate. It was a hard slate through the first 3 weeks, and it's gonna get even harder now with this. But I think when you look at those comparative narratives, and that's what I always think is so interesting when people say Mahomes is washed, or they start throwing him under the bus. Like, it's so, you so quickly toss away someone, and then the top 100, right? We had to wait basically 10 years for the top 100 to roll out by the time of the season, and you see that they put Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen above, where neither of those players have ever even been to a Super Bowl. Neither of those players have ever even won an AFC championship game. And so it's just how we are comparing someone who has already won 3 Super Bowls. I don't know what these yahoos are doing,
I
but
was about to
apparently,
say.
who knows? Who knows? Anyways, stars of the show. But when you compare someone who has already gone to 5 Super Bowls, already won 3 rings, and you compare that to someone who's not even won an AFC championship game, and then we're talking about these same 2 teams and comparing them as if they don't have the caliber to bounce back, where one team has never had the caliber to even finish. Does that make, you get what I'm saying
Oh,
there?
100%.
So it's also, they really, really tanked against the Lions towards the end of that game. They had
Mhm.
it, they were in it, and they let Detroit walk all over them and kind of bully them at the end there. So I think I'm happy to see the Ravens at Arrowhead, especially that it's going to be in Kansas City. That's going to be a better home field advantage for the Chiefs. But it's not to say that these teams don't always play each other to this high powering offense that we're normally used to, and I still expect it to come out.
Oh yeah, exactly. And it's going to probably be the most highly anticipated 1-2 matchup of all time, because
Hmm.
these two teams are better than 1-2, but because of scheduling, because of hard times,
Yep,
because of change, that's just what's going to happen. And I'm
it
with
looks
you. It's
ugly.
easy. It's easy to write all these guys off. It's easy to be like,
Mhm.
oh, it's over. Like this, you look at the stats. You're like, if you're 0-2, you don't make the playoffs for this amount of time. If you're 0-3, you definitely don't make the playoffs. So it's
Yeah.
easy to be like, where's the new toy? Oh, the Chargers are cool. Oh, the Buccaneers are a little spicy. Like, let's go root for something new. But it is also interesting now that the Ravens also sit at 1-2,
Mm.
that we're not talking about them the same. And I think it's easier because the Chiefs have been somewhere and people want to tear down the king,
Of
but the
course.
Ravens have never been anywhere with this iteration, I should say,
Hmm.
that it's easier to be like, no, that makes sense. They have fallen short a couple times, and we saw those last night.
And I mean, you know how it is, Griffin. Everyone panics through 3 weeks, right? Like you even kind of brought up the stat where people are like, "Oh, 0-2 teams that missed the playoffs is by this percentage," and it's like, relax. I mean, we saw the Bengals have a horrific start to what, the 2021 or 2022 season, and
Yeah.
then they went on to beat the Chiefs and win the AFC title game and go on to the Super Bowl. So it's just like, let's pump the brakes. Let's realize that football is not figured out in September, and honestly, good form doesn't really even come until November. You know that. There's no
Oh
good
yeah.
football until after pretty much Halloween. That's when things start settling in. So I it's we're grasping at straws. You know this, also being in the media. Sometimes it's just you're trying to find a storyline to talk about, and these are
Yeah,
the
yeah.
only things are comparing teams, who have had rough starts and where they go in the end. I think when you historically look at what the Ravens have continued to do with Jackson and what the Chiefs have continued to do, and not to negate from what Herbert is doing, but like, let's relax.
Hmm.
I think it's all these are good teams. What we're seeing is good football against very hard opponents. So we'll see where things go here. I'll start to worry come Halloween time.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair, and I think the narrative used to be Andy Reid just tunes it up in September, and he's
Yeah.
against the grain where things need to pick up in November. They just were always solid. I mean, last year 15-2, it's outstanding, to
Yeah.
see that type of
Yeah.
stuff. And like you just said, it's kind of the next thing on the topic list. Are we surprised by some of these 3-0 teams? Like let's
Oh
talk
yeah.
about that for a second. Chargers, 49ers, Colts, Buccaneers, and Eagles. If you told me who was going to be 3-0 out of that list, I'd say Eagles, but I thought, Chiefs in week
Yeah.
2, there'd be a little revenge game. Chargers, sure, but Herbert's got to be a little Superman, as we see, due to his
Hmm.
weapons being a little banged up, the defense being, good but not always great. But then when we look at 49ers, Colts, and Buccaneers, and two of those, the 49ers have won 2 games with Mac Jones, might I
Yeah.
remind the audience. Are you surprised by these 3-0 teams, or is this sustainable success that we're going to see from any of those names that I just kind of listed?
I mean, okay, so the Eagles is not surprising.
Hmm.
However, when I was watching them against the Rams, I'm trying to think through because which blocked field goal was it last week? Because
Yeah.
they, are able to block, run it back, and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? They were so close to losing. And then, on the other side of that, you see the New York Jets have this incredible block field goal, run it back, and still lose to the Bucks after that. The Eagles doesn't surprise me. They're a good football team, and as you know, good football teams, even though they will sometimes play around with their prey, they find a good way to finish. And the majority of the time, what comes down to it is the better team, and they're gonna, be able to wait to kind of pull away in that fourth quarter. They were able to do so. The Eagles are a good team. They have continued to be a good team. Herbert, it's not surprising. I know he's a good quarterback. He's finally settling into things. I think with the new regime there, they are now in their second year really locking into that. Is it legitimate team versus easy schedule? I mean, then I would have to admit that the Chiefs were an easy opponent week one, which they aren't. So I think I'm not surprised by how well that they are doing. I think what Herbert's only thrown one interception throughout the
Yeah.
first three games of the season, so that's good. 49ers, I'm a little surprised with. They just always seem to be plagued by the injury bug, and just can never quite figure things out. It seems like ever since Super Bowl, what was it? 50? Now I'm lumping them all together.
Yeah.
58 or
Yeah.
whichever one was the most recent one against the Chiefs. They were kind of dormant in between Super Bowl 54 all the way up to that most recent one that they were in. So they're just like this hit or miss team. Colts, obviously surprising for me. I think Bucks, I like Baker Mayfield. I've always loved him as a quarterback. I think he's very
Mhm.
gritty. He finds ways to do it. And they did it without, Mike Evans as well, which is impressive to see. So I think there's a few surprises, but is it luck versus legitimacy? That's where it really comes down to. I think that the Chargers will be legit throughout the season. I think
Yeah.
the Bucks will always be a contender, especially in the NFC and the, division that they play in. Not trying to like
Yeah.
say it's the easiest, but I mean, it's not like when you're going against the Panthers, it's not like it's really that hard. Also the Falcons, so it's definitely a little easier for them. But then, Eagles doesn't surprise me at all. So I think it really does come down to ultimately we're 3 weeks into the season. There are weird things that are going to happen, but what were the storylines a couple years ago? The undefeated teams outside of the Chiefs through the first couple of weeks didn't even make the postseason. So Water under
Exactly.
the bridge is what I try to look at it as.
And that's a fair analysis because everybody in my threads comments when I'm like, are these 3-0 teams legit? They point towards the Colts and they're like, they remind me a lot about the Saints last year with Derek Carr. They got off to a fast start. They were
Yep.
3-0 and they were beating up on bad teams. But here's the difference with the Colts. I mean, you take down a Broncos team in week 2 where you're kind of like, whoa, I thought the Broncos were going to take a step. And instead, they
Yeah.
neutralized them, not just beat them, neutralized them. And so the AFC West is completely different now that the Broncos are
Mhm.
down, the Chiefs are down, and when I say down, I mean starting down, and the Chargers have kind of
Right.
took hold, and the Raiders are around. So I don't know. Is there any sort of I don't want to lump the Colts into just this revisionist history of the Saints, but do we give them a little bit more credit? Because that defense is legit. And Daniel Jones, I'm watching all the highlights and I'm watching the games, and I'm like, he is moving a little different. He is getting out of the pocket. He's getting into his weapons. And Jonathan Taylor, he's a top 5 running back when healthy, and everybody forgets his name other than that one season when he put it on. And so now I'm like
I think,
I
yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
it's the biggest surprise for me as well. Also, when I'm looking at their stats, just one turnover.
Yeah.
But I mean, they've been that you as you know that will make or break a win, and I think that they've done a really exceptional job protecting the ball. And it sounds so cliche to bring this up, but fundamental football is going to advance you so much further if you are a protecting your ball, taking care of it, making sure those costly penalties and mistakes are neutralized and kept to a low number. And then on top of that, if you can find your way into the end zone, finishing in the red zone, just again, simple, like keep it simple, stupid, right? And the Colts
Yeah.
really, I think that's an expression that really represents this team. They have fundamentally just stuck to it. It's not really by luck that they've
Hmm.
gotten here. Now, where will they be week 5, week 6? Maybe we'll be talking about completely different storyline. But
Yeah.
so far, they've just been able to keep it simple, play
Yeah.
smart, and now they are in the win column. Would I have believed that if you told me the Chiefs are 1-2, the Ravens are 1-2, and the Colts are 3-0? No, but
No.
we live in the Wild West, so it's always a fun start to the season how everything kind of shakes out. But that's the biggest surprise out of all those teams that you listed, because the other ones have touched on more recently success, so it's not as weird.
100%. And this is a good segue. I thought another team was going to be in this fold of the 3-0 teams. And honestly, what I thought was the best team in the NFL through 3 weeks until now, the Packers. 2-1
Yeah,
after losing to the Browns in a fashion that I can't even really describe. It was murky, it was muddy. I don't know what I saw versus what I saw the first 2 weeks. What do you
mm-hmm.
take with the Packers? Because now I have to go and I have to do my Prox Power Rankings, as I call it. I mean, it's in my name. I have to do a Proc Power Ranking. It just works. But like I was fighting for the Packers after week 1. I was like, I think they're the best team in the NFL. But they're like, did everyone see the Bills and the Ravens? I was like, yes, but those defenses scared me. And the Ravens then remind me of that. And the Bills keep winning, but they do have a sufficient defense and whatnot. And they did go against the 2-headed monster and the Ravens. So I don't know, like what
Yeah,
happened to the Packers losing to a Browns team that we can all admit has a good defense, but it's not that
it's the
elite, correct?
Browns. Like we
Yeah.
no no no. I mean,
Yeah.
and you're right. The Browns usually do have typically a very good defensive front, and they've continued to do that. This is kind of one of those losses, I think, for the Packers where you are reassessing as a staff and you say, what are we? Like this is a what are we loss. Like what is our franchise going to look like? Also, you bring in Micah Parsons and you get this guy who's, we know he's a dog, and like this is a player who's supposed to change the way that things go. And what I saw him playing against the Commanders too was what was it, Thursday Night Football a couple weeks ago?
Mhm.
Um, I was thinking, okay, like we're starting to see some more sparks in the offense. To me, watching them play against the Browns, they were flat. This was just a flat offense. What? They had like a combined, yeah, 5 catches, a combined 5 catches. That is flat.
Yeah.
Also, only 12 first downs. Love was sacked 4 times. Jordan Love's a good quarterback. I don't really know what the disconnect is here. And I will say I don't necessarily follow the Packers as closely as I do with AFC and teams like that, but I was very surprised, especially after the offseason acquisitions and how things have really transformed there, that this is how they came out against the Browns. And again, it's you know what? It is a knock. I can't keep saying it's not a knock on the Browns. It is a knock on the Browns, okay? I was not expecting, I mean, you're not expecting the Browns to go out there and really stick it to them. But for the Packers to go so flat, and then really have nothing defensively to be able to speak about after that performance. It's shocking. They
Yeah.
got to self assess.
It's a good time to self-assess. The way that I'm going glass half full for their fans, because a lot of them are down bad right now. They're like, holy cow, I
Yeah,
can't even believe we would lose that type of game. But here's the thing. I'd rather lose a type of game like that to a team we know we should beat this
sure.
early in the season, so that,
Yes.
like you just said, reassess. So that you don't get feeling like untouchable, if you will. Because
Hmm.
if you lose to a team like the Chiefs or you lose to the Lions or something like that, you would be more like, okay, like we hung with them. It was they're a good
Yeah.
team. Like we're right there, you know. But if we lose to a team like the Browns, and sorry to keep digging the Browns, but you guys know where you're at. It's like, you're kind of sit back and you're like, okay, we aren't untouchable. All these moves
Hmm.
are great. I'm glad that we bolstered the defense with Micah. I'm glad people are stepping up. I'm glad that Jordan Love's not injured to start the year.
Right.
But it's a good time to look yourself in the mirror and get a little bit more serious that any team can beat you. Like the Saints and the Browns and the Titans, they're all NFL teams. They might
Hmm.
only win 3 to 5 games, but they're still going to put up a fight, especially early when they don't know that their season's over yet. And so they're like, oh, because I listened to Benito, their like offensive tackle for the last 10 years, say, I just want to play meaningful football in November. Well, the Browns are now on their way. Now that they've won a game this early in, it's like you can't write off your season yet. So I don't know. Any parting thoughts with the Packers? Where would you move them down after a loss like this? Or would you keep them up in the top three?
Oh, here's the thing. They That's a tough question because again, it's you brought up their past opponents, and I think the parity of this league and what it comes down to is the fact that we chalk up certain, I almost said organizations, but certain franchises as if they're just trash and they're never
Yeah.
going to get out of that pit, and they're never, if you play against them, it's just a given win. That's not how it works, okay? The league is made up of the top athletes in the National Football League, and these are players who, if you give them the slightest edge, are going to find a way to expose you. And again, you can probably pick apart this argument and say, oh, but really a team like this, or a team like the Titans, and you can't let your foot off the gas. This is something that Andy Reid says every single week, and I know we would even kind of joke about it. He'd be like, "We look forward to the challenge of playing da da da." Like, we look forward to the challenge, and it's like, "Oh, is it really a challenge to go play the Giants?" Yes, it is. It's still an NFL team, okay? And I think the Packers, it's not hit the panic button yet, but it is that moment of where it goes, okay, what is our offense? What do we identify as? And what are we going to shift and adjust? I think they have the pieces. I think that they can put it all together. So again, it's just finding the way and the rhythm, and I think the Chiefs can kind of relate to that too. They haven't really found their offensive identity, that rhythm, quite yet. So we'll see how it pans out over week 4, week 5, week 6. I think that's really when they're going to have those serious conversations. But I don't know if I would drop them necessarily like out of top 5, right? But
Yeah.
I mean,
You now have an argument as an analyst and
yes,
a fan. You do have an argument to
that
do
is the
such a
best way to say it.
drastic thing because, like, the Ravens losing to the Bills, that's not a dramatic loss, you know.
Right.
And the Chiefs, same thing. We would be panic, panic, panic if you guys lost to the Giants. So it's
Hmm.
not the untouchable teams that we think are 3-0 or should be 3-0. So it's
Right.
really interesting. And speaking of serious conversations, we have to talk about the Vikings for a second. They are now coming off of JJ McCarthy first 2 weeks. You would think he was the second coming of Jesus in the
Yep. Yep.
versus the Bears. And then week 2, you're like, wait, should they have traded Daniel Jones? We had that kind of conversations following week 2. And then he was unfortunately injured, which we hate to see. But then it was
Yeah.
Carson Wentz time. And if we know anything about Kevin O'Connell, he's just like Kyle Shanahan. He can make any quarterback work. And it's uncharacteristic to most coaches in the NFL. They go on to beat the Bengals 48-10. And Carson Wentz is now in the news being like, do they roll with him for a little bit? Because what I saw in that game was a coach see a little bit more trust in a veteran he knows can throw the ball around the field,
Yeah.
see the defenses a little bit more, and just overall has played the game a little bit longer because that's the biggest knock on JJ McCarthy. He went to Michigan and then they ran the ball 40 times a
Mhm.
game, including himself. His arm was never on display
Yeah.
in Michigan. And so now we're kind of seeing those lumps in the game after his first 2 starts. So I don't know. Is this a serious conversation we need to have about Do they let Carson Wentz rock with it, or the Bengals defense just that bad? Because if we remember, this 48-10 isn't Carson Wentz putting 5 touchdowns on somebody's head. There's
Yeah.
2 defensive touchdowns in that game after the Vikings just got all over the Bengals. So I don't know what to make of this, and I don't want to overreact. But like we just said, it's post week 3, so it's time to overreact to stuff like this.
Right. This is also, I think, when you brought up the defensive touchdowns too. If you were looking at the score on paper, you'd be like, wait, Carson
Yeah,
wins? Like,
yeah,
number one, he's still in the league. This is, he's still rocking and rolling. A lot of people would probably look at that score and think, oh my God, this was a complete showing of the Vikings offense, when that's not necessarily exactly what happened. It was more of a collective effort. However, I think McCarthy, when he started out too, there was an immense amount of pressure on this kid to come in, and correct me if I'm wrong. They opened against, was it the Bears? They opened
yeah.
against
The Bears,
Caleb
yeah,
Williams,
hmm,
and the Bears were up, if I recall correctly,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then the Vikings came back and closed it
hmm,
out and took it to them. That was an I mean, and like you said, this was the second coming. Like, this was a cool development for the Vikings. Who have kind of, ever since Kirk Cousins, have been a little shaky on finding that identity for them. I do think we forget how good Wentz is. I mean, he spent some time in Kansas City backing up Patrick Mahomes. It didn't go as well as people had hoped that it would. But this is also a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. This is someone who has been around for a long time, and like you said, they can offensively trust him to be able to read the defenses, to be able to settle in. He's going to have far less nerves as compared to a rookie who's being tossed into the league for the first time, and everything is super, super, super fast. Now, let's not forget that the Bengals defense is allowing about 31 points per game right now. Okay, that is like bottom 5 in the NFL. Not great. I think it's kind of the question of, are the Vikings better than we thought, or are the Bengals just that bad? Jefferson is still coming out
yeah.
looking good. I had down 8 catches, 124 yards. Wentz having 0 interceptions. Again, is it the defense for the Bengals, or is it Wentz? I don't know. I mean, we've seen him be you know. We've seen him throw some questionable passes, I would like to say, but three touchdowns, 287 yards, 21 of 30. You can't say that's not a good outing. I mean, that's probably better than a couple of Mahomes' stat lines through 3 seasons, or through 3 games into this. So I think it's a mix of the two. I think it's a mix of the Vikings have found a little bit of their footing, and they've done so with injuries early and up front. The Bengals are also really struggling.
Yeah.
And this is not to do with their defense, but Burrow getting hurt so early on. It's just, we know how good you and I we know how good of a quarterback he is. He hasn't really
Yeah.
ever been able to have that time to showcase that year after year. It's like, I feel like he's been hurt every other year, and now to be
Yeah.
dealing with turf toe, you hate to see it. I'm
No.
not the biggest fan of Cincy, but you hate to see it.
No, exactly. I think you hit a ton of great points across the board. And I think when we rewatch the tape and whatnot, Carson Wentz just looks comfortable in an NFL pocket. He had
Yeah.
drives that you just were like, oh, wow. And it was one of the first drives of the game where he just marched down the field and got some points under the Vikings offense that
That's
didn't
right.
look any different because Carson was in the game. Carson was just hitting the plays and the right rhythm to it, which is great to see for a guy, like you just said, kind of been passed around the league. You kind of forget that he's still around, but he is a viable option there as a backup. And so with JJ, that's what I'm looking to see when he comes back from yet another injury so early in his career. I hope he finds comfort in the pocket, because I can almost tell he's too excited to play football. Like, I love how locked in he is, but
Yeah.
and I love the difference between him and like a Caleb Williams, where you're like, does Caleb care all that much sometimes? But JJ's like, I really care, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, you're almost working yourself up a little bit, JJ. Like, learn from Wentz, learn from the system. Let your players go make plays. That was a big thing. He was throwing it to
Hmm.
JJ. He was throwing it to his options and being like, "Hey, go make our team play. Don't make me have to fit it into a gap that I can't hit. Just go make a catch." So, and I think
Yeah.
that's a huge element of trust that I think JJ has to learn about the game, and that turnovers are okay.
Hmm.
Turnovers are okay. I'd rather you be a little too aggressive than not aggressive enough. Because if we remember, James Winston threw almost like 50 interceptions one year, but also 50 touchdowns, and the Buccaneers were looking at the playoffs. Like, interceptions won't kill you, especially if you have a defense like the Vikings.
Yeah, I think once he settles into it, relaxes a little bit, and the things that you just hit the nail on were, those are such typical features and characteristics of a rookie quarterback. Like,
Yeah.
I think what we've seen out of him, especially to start, was he has exceptional talent and he's in a good offense for his skill set. He also has a very good coach who seems to have, and that's a big thing with rookies, is finding a good coach that suits your style, how you receive coaching and how you can be mentored. Also, being with a veteran quarterback like Wentz is only going to make him better. So truthfully, I think the Vikings, I was, sad to see how things ended for them last year, but they are going to continue to be a team that creeps up, and I think that this start for them is more encouraging than discouraging. I really do. I think they have found something that's going to be a long-term fix for them, which is what they've been needing.
Exactly. No, I think the overreaction there would be, oh, JJ needs to be on the bench for a little bit longer. But the underreaction is, let's just let it develop. We've seen enough through 3 weeks that we're excited about what they have
Yes.
on both sides of the ball. So let's just let this play out a little bit. We knew they weren't going to go 15-2 like they did last year, 14-3 or whatever. But yeah, let's talk about a couple other things here. Buy or sell teams: Commanders,
Mm,
Falcons, Steelers, Seahawks, and Jaguars. I say buy or sell because I could go either way every single week. I get excited about my Seahawks and then I don't get excited about them. The
yeah.
the Steelers, I mean, they're around. Rodgers is looking in the pocket, a little bit energetic, and then the Jaguars, I mean, talk about a team that's still winning despite the same narratives kind of applying to them. These teams sit at 2-1, but then you look at the Falcons losing 30-0 to the Panthers, and you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do with that this early? So, do you have any buy or sell opinions on any of these teams?
I think that's a good way of saying it, because the inconsistency here kind of makes you wonder a little bit. I mean, Commanders, obviously things started out to a better start, and then with Daniels being hurt and dealing with that, I have always enjoyed watching him play, especially after watching Burrow come into the league. And then I remember it was specifically maybe either last season or 2 seasons ago when we saw. Wait, now I'm getting confused about my seasons. But it was the first time that him and Burrows faced
Yeah,
off. And
yeah,
I was like, oh, this Commanders team could really be something. However, here we are yet again, and this is not going to shock you because I've said this before. Like, the defense is solid, but the offense is so inconsistent. And it just hasn't settled in. So I don't know. Maybe sell on Commanders.
yeah.
Falcons, Bijan Robinson, obviously an incredible athlete. Defense is doing. I don't know. I'm trying to look at some of their stats. Defense top 10 in yards allowed. Maybe buy as an NFC South contender. Again, what is this? So you got the Saints, you got the Falcons, you got
The
the
Steeler,
Panthers,
yeah.
and
Panthers, yeah.
thinking through the NFC South. Who's the 14?
The
Why am I missing it?
Buccaneers, the
There you go. There you
Buccaneers,
go.
yeah,
So, I mean, let's see how things work out. Maybe this could be something. Again, the Falcons last year against the Chiefs had a great outing, and I really thought this is a team that's really going to be in it, and then it kind of faded down the stretch. So, Falcons, I'll just say, like, they could be a winner of their division.
yeah.
Steelers, again, TJ Watt, incredible, right? I think for them, seeing Rodgers, I'm not a big Rodgers fan.
Yeah, that's
I,
fair.
I I haven't been, especially after what he went and did in New York, and just I feel as if he's a bit of a locker room cancer,
Yeah,
and seeing when he had enough protection, we see the old Rogers, right? But he gets so frustrated easily, and you almost see him. I don't want to say hissy fit, but he kind of just gets in these where maybe they're just panning to him at the wrong time. Of course, the Chiefs have their issues of on the sideline issues with showing a little too much passion and everything. That's great. You want to see that out of a team, but I think for the Steelers, the offense has some ceiling limits, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
fair.
Defense is going to keep them relevant. So that one I'm a little iffy on. You mentioned the Seahawks, right? That's your
Yeah,
team. Defense is allowing 21 points per game. I say that this could be a playoff caliber roster. It just depends on if both sides of the ball are going to play good at the same time. And again, it sounds so silly and cliche, but all three units have to be doing well. They have the talent. Can they all play well on the same, all the same day? And then the Jags, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, had such high hopes for him when he came into the league, and I think this is a team that has never really found their footing with Lawrence as their quarterback. I say
Hmm.
sell. Now, I say all that, and then the Chiefs are going to go face them in week 5. So we'll see how
Yeah.
things go, right? The Jags is always an interesting one, but they have been inconsistently poor for the last, 5 seasons.
Hmm.
And it's just, when are they ever going to figure it out? Because I don't think that Lawrence is the be all end all blame for this. I think it's a culmination of a lot of things, and that's a really oversimplified way of saying that. But right now, I'd say sell with the Jags.
Yeah. I like your list and I like your breakdown. It's hard to poke any holes in it. And that's the point of this kind of segment here. I say buy or sell because I find myself going to the store and buying all of them, going out of the store, and then being like, I should probably return this after I see the Falcons lose 30-0. You see the
Yeah,
Commanders, their injury concerns. I mean, they are the oldest team. And you're like, oh, Jaden Daniels is even injured.
I
What are
forget
they going to
that.
do? Yeah, the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers and Seahawks are the same thing. Are both units going to perform at the same
Yep.
time in the same game? Because we see those outbursts where you're like, "Holy cow, this is awesome!" And then the
Hmm.
Jaguars, you can't trust it. You just are like, "Okay, they're two
No.
and one, but like, who have they beaten yet?" That gets you excited. So I'm with you on all that, and I want to be cognizant of time here, but I need to get this overreaction from out of you here.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're good.
Okay, Texans 0-3. My biggest
Yeah,
overreaction is
he
they
actually
might as
called
well start
Dr.
tanking. I don't even see it. It's not even an 0-3 where I'm like, they could turn it
Uh,
around. I worry something happened. I don't know what it is specifically. There hasn't been enough reports about it that I can really diagnose it. But
yeah.
my biggest overreaction, and of course they're not going to do this, is they should just blow it up, tank, go for the number one pick, get a great weapon, get Jeremiah Smith in the draft, whoever is going to come out as an offensive weapon or defensive weapon, and go from there. But 0-3 start for the Texans. What do you make of that?
Yeah, you got to burn it down. I think I'm with you on that. it's time to it's time to light it on fire, walk away,
Yeah.
and start over. I
Yeah.
think again the Texans, like, this is a team that was going toe to toe with the Chiefs in the 2019 season, and even the 2020 or 2020 season, and this was a team that had such high hopes to figure things out. CJ Stroud too. I mean, I don't. It's not that he's a good talent, but what is going on? It's 11 times you're sacked through 3 games. Yeah,
Yeah.
11 times. That's insane. The run game is averaging, you know, piss poor yards, for lack of better terms. 82 yards per game. That's the bottom 5 as well. Defense has only one takeaway all season. You have to force takeaways, and then it's just high hopes after last year, thinking maybe this is going to be something consistent this year. It's just a big regression. So I think the biggest question
Exactly.
really is going to be, can they dig it out? Can they
Exactly.
find a way to get out from underneath this hole? If not, it's kind of like you said in the intro to this question. Maybe it's just time to burn down the building. Let it be
Exactly.
ashes, and have your little phoenix moment. Okay, burn it down and come out of the
Exactly.
ashes, because I don't know what they're gonna do if they can't figure this out next week. Because who are they taking on next week? I didn't even look.
So they take on the Titans. So you would hope that they get a win, but that also feels like a time for Cam Ward to get his first win in the NFL over in Tennessee. And so just to give a breakdown for the
Woo!
audience, the Texans have lost 14-9 to the Rams, the Buccaneers 20-19 in a kind of heroic fashion that the Buccaneers even won that game. And then they lost to the Jaguars 17-10. There is at least 2 wins in there. But if we look at their
Yep.
points, they haven't scored over 20 points at all this year. Their offense is stagnant. Like you just said, people are getting pressure on them. Sacks are one thing,
Hmm.
but pressures and hurries and everything else are also up. And that
Yeah.
was the same thing we talked about last year. It's like the Bengals and the Texans. We do the same song and dance. When are they going to fix this offensive line? But instead, they were like, let's trade away Laramie Tunsil, which you can have problems with Laramie Tunsil, but he is a great offensive tackle. And
Yeah.
so I'm just confused and I'm worried, and I feel like they need to blow it up because they have the Titans and then they go to the Ravens and then the Seahawks. I mean, you can look at 1-5 through the first 5 weeks, and
That's rough.
after going and beating the Chargers in the first round last year and then making it to the divisional, it is kind of a different season that I expected. I almost thought they could go and 3-0 to start this season,
Yeah.
but here
I,
we are.
you mentioned it though. Outside of the Bucks, there were, there are 2 wins at least that the Texans should have came away with, but
Yeah,
only 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and again sacked 11 times through
yeah,
3 games. You're not
no,
putting up anything, like you said. There's not enough points, and so with that, it's like, If you can't score, what are you going to do? This is a team that, again, had such high hopes, and I don't really know where you can pinpoint the regression. It's just
Yeah.
they have not come out of the gates, and I will not be surprised if we learn of maybe some internal issues that
Hmm.
might be going on. But and not to say that there are, but a lot of times when you see these uncharacteristic like starts, sometimes there's some locker room issues. I don't know that there is. I'm not trying to plant a seed or a rumor, but if something comes out that things aren't really as platonic as we think they are, then that would be a little more indication as to why things are what they are. But besides that, if they go to only one loss through 5 weeks,
Yeah. No.
what you gonna do about that? And when you paid your what? You paid Stingley an ungodly
Hmm.
amount of money during the
Yeah.
offseason to be the highest paid corner.
Hmm.
We'll see.
They find themselves in a position of really good individual players, but glaring weak spots across the board,
Yep.
which then leads you to being the Cowboys. It leads you to being the Bengals. It,
Yep.
like, yeah, you
It
can
doesn't
have the
win Super
best names,
Bowls.
doesn't win Super Bowls. Like those teams that have, you need rookie contracts and guys
Mm-hmm.
developing and those star players that you have and consistency, but you just can't have such glaring holes. So I'm
Yeah.
with you. 1-5 could be in their future, and Texans fans, I'm sorry in advance, especially when you're in a division where Daniel Jones is the leader of the conference, the division right now. It's like Daniel Jones and
Oh,
all of his kids, running around. It's crazy. So Hayley, I appreciate you joining the show again. Again, New York, Central Park. What an episode. This is one of one here. This is fantastic. I'm glad you got to enjoy the outdoor in the sun. I'm glad we had some hooligans in the background for it. That's
I
going to be fun to
know.
clip, and everything else in between. Hayley, say, and what do you got going on? I feel like you have more coming around the corner. Tell everybody what's up because I'm going to tell them to follow you below.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please do. Right now, it is a lot of chaos with the season and working with Bleacher Report and freelancing with a bunch of other people getting to freelance with MLB Network right now as we get ready for postseason baseball. It is just like I said, I'm tired. Like the stuff keeps going, but what a privilege it is to be tired, and to be able to be exhausted by the dreams that you put out in front of you. So good things here. Please shoot me a follow. I'm sure you'll put my handle on there as
Yeah.
well. But Griffin, it's also I want to shout you out because what you have built over. We did this this is like maybe our third or fourth time we've done this
Yeah.
together. When you started, I know, you're like, hey, this is my side hustle. I'm going to try it out.
Yeah.
You have built such a good platform and you have quality content, which is what I love to see out of people. So always appreciate you having me on. It's an honor to be to be able to chat with you.
Well, that's awesome. Ditto right back at you, Hayley. I really appreciate it. This wouldn't have been anything if people like you didn't give me a chance to come on. It is still my side hustle, though. So if you hear of anything in New York, let me know because I'll send
I
you my
will.
business card and
There
we'll
we
go
go.
from there. But everyone, make sure to follow Hayley Lewis Sports below on Instagram, Threads, etc. She's posting daily content all the time and living the dream out in New York. It looks awesome. Hayley, take care of yourself. As always, everyone, take care of yourself as well. And cheers, everyone.